Welcome to Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast that takes your career to the next level. Here's your host, Jane Jackson, author of Amazon Careers bestseller, Navigating Career Crossroads.
So you want to get into human resources? Well, there's HR and there's HR. Have you felt a bit confused about what aspect of HR you're most interested in? From HR administration to workforce systems to HR projects, people services, health and well-being, talent acquisition, diversity and inclusion, change management and more. There's plenty for you to sink your teeth into. But where do you start? Now, my next guest, Maeghan Lee, is a human resources specialist who has done just about all of what I've mentioned. And so we have a chat about her career journey and what it takes to get into human resources. Now, a little bit about Maeghan. She's a customer-centric HR professional with a strong commitment to customer service, and she's a whiz at building strong relationships with people from all backgrounds. Truly inclusive in her approach, she has held responsibilities in recruitment and selection, project management, employee engagement, learning and development, as well as organizational change, work health safety, and work cover. So she certainly has a good grasp of the value of HR in today's workplace. And now let's welcome Maeghan to the show. Welcome, Maeghan.
Thanks for having me, Jane.
Oh, you're so welcome. I've been looking forward to interviewing you for quite a while now because you're a member of my Careers Academy and we've had some really good chats in our group coaching, and you as an HR professional have got so many valuable insights to share for anyone who's thinking about getting into HR. But before we get into your career journey, how about to kick us off, we find out a little bit about what your early career aspirations were when you were a little girl.
All right, so when I was a little girl, my mum actually was training to be a nurse. And that was from when I was 5 onwards. So I guess my career aspiration, as corny as it is, was to be like my mum and to be a nurse. So that was what I kind of wanted to do and what I always thought my career path was, and it never really faltered throughout. I guess even my teenage years, that's what I was sort of going towards in high school.
And what happened? Because you're not a nurse now.
No, I'm not. I did do nursing and I did do some practicals, but we were looking after my grandmother who lived with us at the time as well. And so when we went into the nursing homes and you'd find out that someone had passed away, I'm a bit of an emotional person and it was a bit too close to home for me. So I decided that it probably wasn't the right career for me because it takes a certain amount of strength and tenacity for someone to be a nurse, and I'm not really that kind of a person. I'm too emotional. I get too attached to the patients.
Actually, it is tough, isn't it? Because nursing, it's we always think of it as a very noble profession, and it takes so much out of you because especially if you're a very caring person and very much a people person, then to lose someone or else, to see them suffering, it must just, it's quite a drain, isn't it? And I think you need to develop this really strong outer shell in order to be able to not get emotional too. But the emotion that you do feel and the care that you have for people lends it very nicely to human resources, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of worked out really well in the end. I still feel like that I'm helping people. So I guess one of my core values is being able to help people, so I can still live that through my work, but just in a different kind of way.
It's interesting. So when you were a nurse and you were nursing and you realized that it really wasn't for you, and obviously you were trained to be a nurse and not in something else, what did you do? How did you bite the bullet and say, oh, I need to make a career change now?
I'm kind of talking with my parents because they sort of paid for my course and everything. And yeah, having a good chat with them and just talking it out and them going, we don't really think it's good for you either. We can see it taking a drain on you and it's probably not the right career path for you. And it was sort of like, okay, cool. That's out the window. Now what?
And so what did you do? Did you do some assessment of yourself and what you enjoy in order to choose the next career path?
I'd done that in high school, but I didn't really sort of redo that. I ended up signing up with Matchworks. So they're a job agency that help people get a job. And so they helped me with resume and cover letters and to try and get a job. So I was about 19 then. So, yeah, they were helping me to get something. And at the time it was just sort of, well, I don't really know what I want to do and what I want to be. So looking for kind of anything and everything really.
It's really hard, isn't it, when you're that young at 19 and you've tried one career and you realized you're not quite cut out for that and it's not where your passion lies. And then thinking, what else can I do without having guidance and support to really assist you creating a resume? There's no point, is there? There's no point having a resume if you don't know which direction you want to go into. And so what happened? It sounded like in the early days, it was much like most people are, not quite sure what you really want to do. And tell me the story. What happened?
So we did a lot of drop-offs of my resume in places and kind of tried that in the town that I live in Geelong, in Victoria. So sort of did that around town. And then Matchworks is actually owned by a place called Coringal, which is now called GenU. And there was a traineeship available for an admin assistant in their HR department. And my caseworker, so to speak, she thought that I would be really good for it and put my resume forward, and I got an interview. So they then offered me the job after that. And when I got the phone call, I was like, are you sure? And the manager on the phone was like, yes, we're sure. Do you want the job? I'm like, yes, I want the job, but are you sure? I was just excited and surprised.
I mean, bless you. Honestly, the wonderful feeling when you're young and in your teens, and somebody suddenly says, "Oh, you want a job?" It's really quite exciting, isn't it? I remember my first job. I just couldn't believe it. I'm going to get money for this. It was really quite interesting, isn't it? So you got your foot on the corporate ladder.
Yes.
Working in admin. You still couldn't believe it, and you started. Now, I know you have a long and successful human resources history. So from admin, how did you make your transitions to where you are today?
So at Coringal, I was there for a fair amount of time, about 6-7 years. So I sort of did a lot of bits and pieces in the admin space there, helping with induction and recruitment and just bits and bobs that people sort of threw at me, and then moved into a project role to set up their recruitment system. And so that was Page Up, and we got them on board and we did the whole project from start to finish. And yeah, so while I was at Coringal during that time, my manager suggested that I do a diploma in human resources. So I did that as well, and the company I did that with, LP Communications, suggested that I do a dual diploma in business management. So I did that as well because it didn't cost too much extra. And I thought, well, I may as well have that on my CV, and I could do some extra HR courses to have under my belt and to sort of help out with everything else going on.
What a fabulous manager to suggest that this is what you should do, because he must have noticed that there was some potential there, having given you that project to work on with Page Up and setting up the recruitment systems. But in order for you to get any further, you would have had to have some qualifications behind you. Yes, and so very good forward thinking from the manager. It makes me really think that how lucky were you to have someone who noticed that and encouraged you as well, because if you didn't, you could have drifted, into a number of different things, not really knowing. So armed with your diploma in HR and in business management, that put you in a much stronger position, didn't it?
It did, yes.
Mm-hmm. And what happened after that?
So I'd been there for, like I said, around 6-7 years, and we weren't sure sort of where Page Up was going and whether we were going to do the next module. And I kind of felt like the team had grown massively. When I started, there was about 3 of us looking after 1,200 staff, and the team had grown to about 10 people, and the Coringal had grown massively as well. And I just felt it was my time to move on. So I started looking for HR officer roles or even HR admin roles, just because the naming of roles can be very different to what's in a position description. So sort of just looking at the sort of the next step up, and also looking in Melbourne. So that's an hour away from Geelong. So just that there you've got a bit more opportunity. The salary is a little bit higher as well. Not my biggest driving factor, but more just the being able to be in Melbourne and having more opportunities than in Geelong.
And you secured a role in Melbourne?
I did, yes. So I got a job at AHPRA, the Australian Health Practitioners Regulation Agency, and I was there for a couple of years and sort of started off as an admin position and moved into more of a sort of admin change piece, because there was an organisational change that needed to be done, and the manager that started a couple of months after me, she came to me with it going, oh my God, I don't know what to do, I need help. And the other admin person was on another systems project, and I was like, well, I don't know a lot either, but we'll fake it till we make it. And the executive team gave us a couple of hundred position descriptions and a spreadsheet. And so we went to them and said, we need an org chart. That's sort of 101 of change management. And so, spent about 8 months doing all of that, and that was all of corporate services within AHPRA. So that was another interesting sort of facet of HR that I hadn't really been able to sink my teeth into, and it was a really good opportunity to have as well.
Talk about baptism by fire. Here are 100 position descriptions. You sort out the org chart. We're having a major restructure and you're taking care of it, and you hadn't had any experience in that area.
Pretty much, yeah, just what I'd learnt in the diploma, and that was it.
Well, actually, what a great learning ground. How did that project work?
It worked really well. We ended up scrapping the spreadsheet they had and redid it completely, and sort of had our ideas, and obviously had support from my manager, which was fantastic, and learnt a lot from her. She was amazing. And so, we just sort of got into it and just went, okay, let's sort this out. And we ended up making sure that the exec team were held accountable, because it was their baby, and they had their ideas of what it should look like. So, had a really good relationship with the executive team there as well. And I think that was key, was keeping those relationships and making sure that I knew I could go up to the exec team with a question and all of those kind of things from the outset, just to say, we really need to work on this as a team, and not just have, us in a corner thinking that we're doing the right thing and then we go to them and it's wrong. So that was the biggest thing I think that I learnt from that.
I think whenever there's any sort of change, major organizational change, the partnerships that human resources forms with the rest of the business is so important, because, it's dealing with people and how they feel and the anxiety, and yet the business has got to stay up and running and profitable. And when there is change, people feel very anxious. And if it isn't done well, all hell could break loose, couldn't it? Yes. What would you say were your key learnings from that major change project?
So I think definitely keeping the communications open between HR and the exec team to make sure that we're all on the same page, and ensuring that you also keep the communications between what's going on and also with the staff. Because, you'd hear whispers of staff thinking that something was going to happen, or this person is going to be put into this job and I'm going to lose my job, and all of these things are going to happen. And it was sort of, actually, it changes every day, guys. I'm updating my spreadsheet every day. I don't even know what's going on, and I'm in the thick of it. So, nothing is set in stone. So it's sort of keeping those communications open, and we made sure that we did that. The weekly email came out from the corporate services exec team to say, this is what we're working on, and no one's going to lose their jobs, and your job description might just change instead. So just in reassuring staff and making staff feel comfortable with that change.
Certainly it's the open communication, constant, regular, positive communication, but also honest communication too, to let people know exactly what's going on, as much as is permitted to be shared, is so important. So that was a huge learning for you in a very, very short period of time. And so with the restructure, so people didn't lose their jobs, they got new job descriptions.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a really successful outcome then.
Yeah, so a lot got new job descriptions, and then they had also added a few more positions within the structure. So then, if someone didn't quite fit into a position, then we had sort of that pool say, okay, well, these are the open positions that we've got. Which ones do you feel you align with, so that we weren't pushing someone into a job they didn't want. And then it could be a fair sort of, I guess, internal recruitment process. So there were jobs enough for everyone, and we knew everyone had the skill set. It was just where people wanted to lie in that. And I was, I guess, lucky enough because I was on a 12-month contract there, and I was encouraged to apply for a health and wellbeing role. And so I did that and got that role. So I was lucky to stay on with APRA after that.
Health and well-being, how perfect.
Yes.
After major organizational restructure, and then be leading the charge when it comes to health and well-being, that makes a difference, because without good health and without employees feeling valued and mentally as well as physically healthy, you don't have a productive workforce, do you?
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, when I first started at APRA, the first thing that they sort of handed me was Health Week. So, and that sort of carried on throughout my career, is doing some sort of health and wellbeing week or day or something. So when they sort of handed me that, I was like, yeah, no worries, I'll go ahead and do that. That's fine. And so I was sort of had my finger in that pie anyway, and they knew that I was passionate about it. So that kind of helped a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic. And when you transitioned to your health and wellbeing role, what was your main focus?
So my main focus ended up being workers' compensation, because that was within the position description. So that ended up sort of pretty much being my whole job in the end, because there was a lot to fix up and there was a lot to learn. So I was lucky that there was someone that was looking after it that could hand it over to me and teach me a lot of what I didn't know, which was pretty much nothing. And also getting some training with CGU, which is a workers' compensation company, and learning that pretty much I was on the phone to them every day asking questions going, I don't know what to do. And they were amazing helping me out. So it was mainly, working with them and working with finance as well with the workers' compensation, rather than being the proactive side of things, which is what I wanted to move towards.
Sounds like another baptism of fire. Throw you into health and wellness and let's see if you sink or swim. Yes. And so by being tenacious and asking for help when necessary, you managed to really get up to speed with that. But it still wasn't your passion, though. No,
because it was very reactive, and I wanted to do a lot of proactiveness with that role. And I think they knew they needed a role that incorporated both aspects, but it was sort of yes, we need a role, let's just chuck it into a PD and recruit. And that was sort of when I decided that maybe, it's my time to leave. I've left my little legacy, and then that might give them time to sit back and go, okay, we need to reassess the position description, which ended up what happened. And for the next role that I had, my referee, she ended up actually getting the role that they redid the position description for. So, and she was perfect for the role. She helped me a lot with a lot of the health and safety stuff. So yeah, I couldn't have put anyone else into that perfect position but her.
Mm-hmm. And so developing all of these additional skill sets, organizational change management, health and well-being, workers' compensation, you were building quite an arsenal of skill sets. So what did you do with them?
So I ended up coming back to Geelong and taking up a maternity leave position as a HR officer. So I sort of worked with my mentor. I had a mentor when I was at APRA, and she sort of suggested that, mate, because I was sort of like, I don't know what to do next. So she kind of helped me in the direction of, okay, so maybe I'll do a HR generalist role and do some more, like, just every aspect of HR, and then maybe find my passion within that. So that's what I did, sort of got a role at Tribal Group, which is back end of education management systems for universities, so Deakin in Australia, but they've also got EMEA, so UK is where they're mainly based. So there was me and my manager looking after 300 staff in the APAC region, and then there was about 600 staff and 13 HR people in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So then you ended up with a regional role, regional responsibilities, and thrown into the deep end yet again. Yeah. This is a theme, Maeghan Lee. It's almost like, give me another challenge. Let's see how we can work on that. So that must have been really interesting.
Yeah, I love the role. The role was amazing. If I could stay there, I would have. But the person who I was there for the mat leave cover decided to come back, so had to leave her spot. But I got to be in a lot of different projects at Tribal Group, which was really exciting because they were sort of starting up a few bits and pieces. And the first one, funnily enough, was health and wellbeing. So I had to do health and wellbeing days for, they've got Geelong site, Richmond, which was in Melbourne, and a Sydney site as well. So I had to do days for each of those sites.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So anyone who's thinking about human resources and thinks that it's one thing, which it isn't, because, there's learning and development, there's health and well-being, there's recruitment, there's training, development, leadership programs. There are so many different aspects of human resources. What would you say now, Maeghan, with the experience that you've had, what is the dream area that you would love to sink your teeth into?
So I think my next step will be another HR officer role to get some more experience under my belt. And then ideally after that, I want to get into a HR project officer position. I was lucky enough in Tribal to implement a 90-day induction program across the board. I also assisted with the intranet, so that was a lot of technical stuff as well. So doing that in the front end and the back end, as well as, I guess, health and wellbeing is another project. So just having all my fingers in all of those different pies and being able to bring new initiatives into HR and into an organisation to help staff sort of then goes back into the values that I guess I had back when I was thinking about wanting to be a nurse and helping people, because all of these things end up helping staff members to do their jobs to the best of their abilities, and then that helps the company and helps everyone else. So yeah, I think that's sort of where I want to go.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. And I think especially because of that initial nursing background that you have, always hang on to that caring side of you, because sometimes, as you become more and more successful within HR and more senior, you end up being the hatchet person. When there are restructures and redundancies. And sometimes because, the pressure that HR must feel that, we got to make the numbers, and there's pressure from above and finance and all of this, still holding on to that, the people side, and being able to nurture and grow the professionals who really want to make a difference is very important, isn't it? What would you say, Maeghan? I'm interested, having had so much health and wellness experience now, what would you say affects employees' health and wellness the most?
I think mental health. I think that's the thing that people don't really think about enough. They always think about, I've broken something, or, I've sprained something, those kind of injuries. And I think mental health is the biggest thing that isn't really looked upon well. There's still that stigma against that, and that they can't tell their employer that they've got mental health issues. And I think, I'm in a lot of my conversations with people as a HR officer, and even in all of my roles, was always referring them if they said that they might have a problem with going to the EAP, which is the Employee Assistance Program. So that's a program that people can go to that pretty much all organisations in Australia have, that can give people support on anything. So that can range from finances to physical health to mental health, nutrition, all of those kind of things. And that was the thing that I referred to people the most, was to have a look at the EAP and see what they had to offer, because people and even managers, when they were going, trying to, performance manage someone, I was always, checking in with them to say, how are you going though? you're looking after your staff member, but how are you going? So sort of, checking in with them all the time as well.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Because so often you just think of the one employee, oh, they're affected because they're feeling this. But actually the people around them are affected by their situation too, because if it's negative or if it's concerning, others do also worry. I remember I was at it was called a notification day, when there was a manager who had to make 25 of his staff redundant. And I was, after he would give them their explanation and their talk, I was there to pick up the pieces as such and say, look, this is what we can do to support you moving forward. And so all of the care and support was going for the impacted employees, as it should do, because they need it. But at the end of the day, the manager was spent. I walked in and he was in tears because he loved his staff members, and it was a decision that wasn't his. He just had to deliver the message and lose a huge chunk of his team. And he was broken that day. So I just sat there for about an hour and we talked, and he needed to debrief as well. And this is the thing. If you don't have someone to talk to who maybe is a safe person to talk to, then you bottle it up, and it can cause all sorts of problems and can be quite traumatic at the end, especially when it is organizational change. Yes?
Yeah, definitely. Now, I did have a lot of people sort of just go, oh, can we have a coffee, Skype me or something and say, can we have a coffee? And I'll be like, yep, I'll meet you downstairs, so that we're, you don't seem to be looking at, going out of the office with HR, because, why are you going out with them for? Because we don't like to talk to anyone else. But, just having those people feel comfortable to have that chat. And even though I knew what was going on, just being someone to listen to is a lot of HR, is just being there for people just to talk to. And I think that's the biggest value add that I think I've given to a lot of people. I hope I've given to a lot of people. It's just being able for them to feel comfortable to talk to someone at work if they can't talk to anyone else. And I think that's a big key thing for HR.
I think so often people tend to forget. They think of HR as HR, but it's human resources. It's about humans. It's about connecting. It's about people. And at the end of the day, when we go to work, because we spend 80% of our lives at work, many of us, our friends are there. It's our life. It's our routine. And without feeling happy, if you're not feeling happy in your role, it's a huge portion of your life of unhappiness, and not being able to vent sometimes in a safe place is quite detrimental to people's mental health. I'm glad now that there are so many initiatives that actually highlight the importance of mental health now. And I think because of your values, that it's so important to treat people fairly and kindly as well. It makes you a good person to be able to do that, while still keeping a focus on the commercial side of the business.
Yeah, because you still have to go back to the computer and then crunch all the numbers and if I've gone through the redundancies as well with Tribal Group, and then you debrief with someone, and then go back to the spreadsheet where you're doing a letter for someone else, and you just have to sort of sit back and go, yep, this is just one part of the job, and then I've just done a good thing. So sort of weighing up the positives and the negatives, and making sure that the positives are the most that come out of the day.
And what do you do to look after yourself, Maeghan?
I try to meditate. We've talked about this a fair bit, about me meditating.
Yes.
So I especially did that when I was working in Melbourne, because I was taking the train. And so that's an hour trip that I could just put the headphones in and meditate. I also walk. So at the moment where I'm working, I can walk home. So I've been doing that. So that's chuck headphones in again and put on a podcast, like your podcast, and pop that in my ears and walk away. And also just having time with my family, really. I've got a very close family. I've got 2 nephews, and I love them to absolute pieces. So spending time with them on the weekends. The eldest nephew, he's 8, he sleeps over during school holidays. So we always have a good time when he sleeps over. And then just hanging out with my partner and just having time with him and, just de-stressing. And I crochet as well, so I'm a bit of a nana. So crocheting just in front of the TV just to sort of, just de-stress and, not really, think too much about anything and just let the day go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so important to have an outlet as well. And I think by connecting with family and friends and giving yourself time out, that's really important. And also doing a bit of crocheting. It's very relaxing, isn't it? You've just reminded me, I might need to start doing that myself. I used to love that when I was little. I used to do it with my mum, and it was a fun thing to do together. We just sit there and have a bit of a chat and crochet away. And it's like a mindless activity that ends up with something really beautiful.
Yeah.
I might need to commission you to make a couple of jackets for my 2 cats. That would be good. I'm sure you'd come up with something very clever, wouldn't you? Which would be good. But certainly encouraging your team members or your staff members to take the time out and appreciate the family and to be really mindful of all the good things that you have, even when life does get a bit stressful at work. That's so important. And so what would you say is your absolute dream role that you can really sink your teeth into?
Oh, good question. I think dream role would be a project officer role, where it's going to be a variety of different things, a whole bunch of initiatives, definitely something with systems. I've always sort of been good with systems and IT, Dad's IT, and sort of we always, if you had to fix a laptop or something or computer, you'd be sitting there next to him while he explains it, and by osmosis, somehow the tech has gotten into my brain, and my partner's also in tech as well. So that's sort of a bit of a strength of mine. So that's definitely something that I want within a role, and just to be able to roll out some initiatives and bring that to the table for an organisation.
Mm-hmm. Multiple skill sets, especially, with being IT savvy and also being a kind person who's very aware of health and wellness. You're able to do recruitment. You can run projects. You can run change management initiatives or handle organizational change while still keeping people motivated. Those are multiple skill sets that are very valuable. And so right now, what are you doing?
So at the moment, I am contracting for the NDIA, and it's in their learning and development team, and just helping out with their admin side of things for their internal facilitators, and they've been around for 6 years now, but they're still very much a startup organisation, and they don't have processes for a lot of things. So at the moment, we're sort of building in some processes for a lot of the leadership training that they've rolled out, and how that will go for the facilitated sessions, and how we'll log that online and all those kind of things. So sort of smoothing out the rough edges.
Oh, good. So you can pull in your technical ability there to ensure that it runs smoothly. So really, with this quite varied skill set with a big heart, that's basically you, isn't it, Maeghan? It's Maeghan with the big heart who's got multiple skill sets and very technical as well as very people-oriented. Ultimately, when you secure a fabulous role that enables you to work on numerous projects, to leverage your IT savvy, as well as that solid HR background that you're developing now, that would be ideal.
Yes.
So I'm interested to find out. So this is a contract role that you're in at the moment.
Yes.
And when that starts to wind up, you'll be targeting the dream role, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's probably the next step, is probably going for a HR officer position, and then, sort of looking at that as well, just because I've found during my job search between getting this contract role and the mat leave position that project roles are few and far between. So it will be sort of, definitely being a HR officer, even in a big organisation where there is the opportunity to possibly move into a project role, that would be amazing. That would be perfect, the perfect scenario. Or, exactly, finding a project officer role that I can just slide straight into.
Well, I think anyone who got you would be very, very lucky. I would wonder, what would your advice be to someone who is a graduate or someone who's thinking of entering human resources for a profession long term? What would your advice be to them?
I think to keep their minds open, to not just think, I need to be a HR officer, I need to be a HR advisor. I think just getting your foot in the door in an organisation, knowing that they've got, if they've got a big HR presence, then that's fabulous, because then you can probably learn off a lot of people. Or even just going into a small organisation that can grow and seeing that potential and then utilising the skills that they've got from there. And I know for me personally that for all of my roles, I would like a manager that can also be a mentor. So also ensuring that they're going to have that as someone that they can go to, that they can learn from, because that's been my biggest learnings in my career, is not just the diploma, but definitely from all of the managers that I've had.
Yes, and being able to see the different communication styles and the leadership styles. Yeah. And what sort of a leader would you say you are?
Oh, good question. I've never thought of myself as a leader, I guess.
Well, it's time to start thinking, Maeghan.
Yeah. I've had a trainee work under me and a few temps that I looked after. So I think I'm a fairly approachable leader and fairly relaxed, but also, obviously wanting to get the job done and needing to make sure that we're doing the right things and holding people accountable for things and not afraid to sort of, tell people that, you've missed this bit and all of that kind of thing, but saying it in a way that isn't going to make them feel terrible, just sort of, making sure that it's more of a learning experience for people, because that's how I like to be led. So I guess sort of, learning off the managers that I've had in the past and sort of replicating that.
So really practicing situational leadership rather than autocratic leadership. You sound like a very, very diplomatic leader, which is wonderful, because that way you're able to get consensus from people and adapt your style according to what's going on, and be firm when you need to be firm, and to be a kind ear for someone to actually start to bend when they need someone to listen to them too. So that's lovely. So what I want to do, Maeghan, is, this is so interesting. This I'm going to consider to be part 1 of our interview. And then when you secure your dream role, or you're very close to your dream role, we're going to revisit this. And I want to hear how you moved from where you are today and what you're doing and what you're aspiring to what you're doing next. And that will be really the next step up in your HR career, won't it?
It will, yes.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. Do you want to leave us with a few final parting Maeghan Lee thoughts?
I think just from a HR perspective, if anyone's wanting to get into it, is, I started in admin, so it doesn't really matter where you start, as long as, if it's your passion and, think outside of what you think HR is. We're not the big bad sticks. We do the initiatives, and yes, we've got policies and procedures, but we do try and do those initiatives that are value adding to staff members. So I think just from, I guess, a general HR perspective, we do try and do the best that we can for staff in the end.
Oh, definitely. Where would we be without HR? It's not always about the money.
Yes, exactly.
It often is, but it's not always about the money as well. Well, thank you so much, Maeghan. It was really interesting for you to share your insights about human resources and how you started out as a nurse and transitioned into human resources as a generalist, and also working on HR projects, etc. So it's fascinating. There are so many different aspects to HR to consider. So I think this will help many people who are thinking about human resources as a career.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's now round about 8:30 in the evening in Sydney and in Geelong as well. So I will say good night and thank you, Maeghan. If If you enjoyed this podcast, look for Your Career Podcast on iTunes and leave a review. And for all the career management support you need to create your dream career, visit janejacksoncoach.com and join my Careers Academy for live career webinars, group coaching, one-on-one coaching support, as well as my online career development courses. Isn't it time you found your dream job?
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at janejacksoncoach.com.